Happy Friday, everybody. This is Matt Radicelli from Rock the House and Rock the House Audiovisual. Kicking in here at the office and holding it down. Today, we're going to talk about PPP and other SBA programs. I've asked a couple friends and associates to join us here today. Currently on the call, we've got Mr. Jonathan Slane. Jonathan, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Ready to rock.
Sweet. You can tell us all about that fun stuff behind you here in a little bit as well. We also have Mr. Steve Tanner. Steve, how are you today?
Fantastic. Thanks for asking.
All right. Steve's actually just a couple offices down the hall right here.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Yes. What'd you say? What was that? Well, okay. As you guys know, we're broadcasting to lots of different Facebook pages and a couple YouTube platforms. If you have questions, you can either text me at my phone number or you can actually post on my personal Facebook page. If you want to know what that cell phone number is, here you go. And then information 216-219-4561. Do my best with the questions. And I guess, Jonathan, we're going to start with you if you don't mind. Steve, I'm going to solo you out here and make you go away. Jonathan, tell me a little bit about what is PPP and how does it differ from other SBA programs?
So the Payroll Protection Program is the part of the CARES Act that you may have been hearing about on the news that Congress passed to help us get out of this most recent Corona-induced crisis. And the cool part about it is that it's really designed to help small business owners quickly get money through the SBA, through the Small Business Administration, so that they can afford to keep paying payroll currently when many small businesses aren't able to operate. The great part about the program for the business owners is that a portion of those loans will be forgiven, meaning they won't need to be repaid by the business owner, since it's truly meant to help during this pandemic.
All right, so I've got all three of us back on the screen here, and I'm going to bring in another friend. Kristen, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. So it's going to be a family affair today because we're all getting like tons and tons of emails and phone calls from associates having to do with PPP and SBA loans and other kinds of things. So, Kristen, we're going to come back to you here in just a moment. Right now, we're going to toss it over to Steve. Steve, how many different times, and tell us a little bit about how this is going. What does the paperwork look like right now? And what can somebody expect that's on the application end of what's happening with this?
The application itself is actually quite simple. If it's 2 pages of information, the additional documentation that's needed, there's about 9 other items that the SBA is asking for right now, from copies of driver's license for the applicant, payroll summaries, and copies of 941 filings, your 940 filing, a 60-day projected budget. And these are just the items that one bank has been saying is required. But the app itself, 2 pages and very easy.
Gotcha. Now, Kristen, the reason we brought you back, well, first of all, we have to tell everybody that you were brave enough to give us your actual business financials during our cash flow forecast segment, and you really hung them out there, as I keep saying. So now, you're leading the pack. You're getting right to the front of the line and handling some stuff. So what did you do today? Tell everybody about what you successfully accomplished today.
Yeah, we successfully accomplished getting our PPP application submitted. So now it's just a waiting game. We went through Bank of America, which is who our bank is, and they made the process really easy. On Monday, actually, let's rewind to last Friday when I found out that the stimulus had finally been passed. So I took the weekend to start gathering the documents similar to what Steve is talking about. We created financial statements. We started pulling employee reports. We created a budget, and I just started gathering everything I possibly could so that by Monday I could start making phone calls to my bank contact. And he actually put us in contact with the person who's in charge of the PPA for Bank of America in my region. And he was keeping me up to the date. And he said, as soon as the link is available online, I'll send it to you. This morning, I got the text message saying, hey, the link's available. I logged in, and their online process was actually super easy. So I think what they're trying to do is make it easy on the front end so that on the back end, they can start asking for all those things. So
Yeah, so you're quite a special bird today, because as we're hearing through the channels, Bank of America is one of the only platforms that is successfully processing applications. Is that correct?
Yes, that is what I'm hearing. A lot of colleagues are text messaging me. And the thing too is I'm hearing from a lot of the banks is if you're not already a customer with them, you cannot go through them to apply. I think one of the other things that I learned, I sent my bank contacts to a colleague and she was going to switch everything over to Bank of America. There's actually a 7 to 10 day waiting period where if you are going to apply for an account, they've got to mail you paperwork and then send it back. So someone is definitely watching over me and my team right now. So blessed for that.
And Steve, that aligns with the information you received today as well. We do business with a couple different banks. Can you share your experience about what we were told about sort of trying to jump on the bandwagon with another bank?
Yeah, if you didn't have an existing banking relationship with any bank, you were getting a roadblock. You had to have an account, and the timeline to establish the account and apply was extended. So that's absolutely accurate. If you're not already in with a bank that offers an SBA program, you might have some difficulty getting in the program because not all banks offer SBA lending.
Yeah. All right. So, Jonathan, you sent out a very poignant and timely email this morning about maybe not wanting to be at the front of the line, but sort of running to the middle of the pack. Can you explain what you meant by that and tell everybody about that?
Yeah. So, we got the update from the SBA. They're calling it an interim final update meeting, which I'm not quite sure what that means in terms of their rules, but they were clarifying in that 30-page update what the rules are for the banks moving forward that we can expect in administering this program. My worry is that some of the things changed in this draft versus what I had read previously. For example, when we submit payroll, should we be submitting our payroll for the Paycheck Protection Program from 2019 and using that to establish our average monthly payroll? Or should we be looking at the last 12 months, meaning that if you're applying today, like I understand that you did, Kristen, that would you look at 4/1/19, April 1st of 2019 through March 31 of this year? And so I don't think that's still clear. If I understand correctly, though, I think Bank of America is asking for an average from 2019, which I think conflicts with the guidance that was sent out late last night. But in any case, it's small tripwires like that that I'm worried might stall applications. And so that's where I was sending a note out today just to say, if your bank hasn't opened up the application, and Bank of America is the only bank that I've heard of that's actually processing applications right now, that you should just prepare this weekend and probably the early part of next week, because I do think it's going to take a minute for banks to catch up and be able to get in position to process these applications. The other thing that's worrying me, Matt, is that the National Banking Association, the American Banking Association, is voicing concern that they're not getting paid enough to process these applications, that there's actually more to it than they thought there was going to be. And so unless they're going to get paid a higher interest rate, or unless they're going to get paid more in fees, that it actually, even though they don't have any liability in processing the applications, that it's going to take more time than they initially thought it would, because they are liable to make sure that you have the payroll reports, that the payroll reports that you calculated the proper monthly, and that you're not on the National Terrorism Registry, et cetera. So I think right now there's going to be some back and forth between the banks, the Banking Association, and the SBA to get all those wrinkles ironed out. That's what's concerning me right now.
Thank you very much. We have a couple questions coming in. Just a reminder, if you have a question for anybody who's on our panel today, feel free to either post it on my personal feed right now or text me the question. We'll do our best to pop it up and address all the ones that we can. We're going to try and keep our broadcast to somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes tops, unless we're just really rampant with questions. First one coming in, I think we're going to direct to a couple different guests. It really addresses, a lot of people are hearing, as an employer, why we're applying and what's happening for that. But as an employee, what do we need to tell anybody who's maybe watching right now that has a question about what does PPP mean for them as an employee? So Steve, we haven't finished this strategy here at Rock the House, but would you like to take that? What if I were an employee, what do I need to be aware if my employer is taking a look at PPP? What does this mean for me as an employee?
It means that there's a possibility that your employer might bring you back on payroll sooner than would have been feasible or capable, depending on the financials of the business. So just to use a simple example, perhaps if we didn't anticipate that an employer could bring an employee back on until maybe June 15th or July 1st, this program might offer the ability for the employer to bring the employee back on 8 weeks earlier, and have some assistance in getting them paid.
So would you say, if we have to categorically give an answer, Kristen, do you think that our team members being aware that we are doing our best to apply for PPP or other relief programs, is this a good thing for them?
150%. I think that this is probably the best option that could have been thrown on our plates as business owners as an opportunity. Because essentially what the PPP is doing is saying, let's look at your past payrolls compared to what could have been in the next 8 weeks. And let's let the government give us as small business owners that amount of money so we can go back to the payroll and say, look, we're going to keep you guys on just as we had planned to do, so that we can make it through that. And then, once we get on the other side of that, everybody is still able to keep jobs. I think, the biggest concern has been, do I need to go on unemployment? How do I keep my job? And this really is the answer to that.
There's another piece. If an employee does start receiving a paycheck from their employer, they're going to have to keep track of what weeks they were compensated for by unemployment, because they'll have to give back any money that they were paid by unemployment if it was given at the same time or for the same period that they were receiving a paycheck from their employer. So it'll be important for the employees to be aware of what pay period they're being paid for. If their employer gets approved for the PPP and their employer puts them back on payroll, if you're in, for example, the third week of May and your paycheck comes maybe towards the end of May, but you filed for unemployment for that third week of May, you may have to give that money back. So just be prepared, because you cannot double dip.
Yeah, the other big thing, I know many of us are in service industries, is that one of the things we thought was that employers were going to use the PPP for payroll for 1099 contractors. But we see in this latest draft from last night that 1099 contractors are actually eligible and have to apply for the PPP themselves. So if you get paid by your employer as a 1099, then you need to go and fill out a PPP application yourself if you want to recoup part of the income that you're missing out on because of the corona crisis. Your employer cannot apply for those funds, and so cannot pay you as a 1099 contractor. So I think that's a big change that we saw in the latest draft, and everybody listening to this needs to be aware of that, especially if they are an independent contractor and get a 1099.
Let's actually address that a little bit more in depth. That was one of the questions that just got sent via text, and that was, do independent contractor payments get included in the payroll, which is a separate address? So Jonathan and Steve, regard anybody, Kristen, tell us. So there's sort of on the way in, and then there's on the way out. There's what we have on this 2.5x based on the previous period, and then there's what can we use the money for. So Jonathan, you go first. Steve, anything else to add? Go for it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear in the latest draft that it's a no on both sides. So you cannot use payroll paid to independent contractors as part of your maximum calculation, nor can you use funds received through the PPP to pay 1099 contractors.
And is that aligning with everything that you are also working with, Steve?
Yep.
All right, then I'm glad that everybody's gotten clarification on this, and it's nice that we were all told that we'd have such clarification today, and that came through for sure. Where would you guys recommend that somebody go to learn more about this and to read it, straight from the source? Where should they be going?
SBA.gov is where they're publishing all the source documents, and where they promise to continue publishing interim updates to the rules and regulations.
One of the messages that just came through was this link here, which I just visited and has a pretty well boiled down version. It looks like a treasury.gov address, and it's assistant platforms for small businesses. So if anybody wants to take a glance at that, that looks like a pretty nice page as well. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, back to questions. What would you guys recommend? And this is a little bit of conjecture here. What would you recommend if somebody's bank is telling them that they have to wait 3 to 5 days to get a response or work on this? Do you think that there's any fear of the program running out of money? Jonathan?
So yes, I mean, it is a first come, first served program. I believe 349 billion is how much has been allocated to it. We know that there has been, we've got 10 million people filing for unemployment in the last couple of weeks. We know back in the Great Recession, it took months to achieve that level of unemployment. So I do think things are going to move quickly here. So as quickly as you can move to get your application in, I think that will be safer. So yeah, I'm worried about it for my clients.
Now, Kristen, next one for you is, one of the questions is, how quickly can employees, sorry, I'm trying to read through a typer. How quickly can employees expect to get called back to start working if my company is approved for PPP? Kristen, you've probably already thought about this. What's your plan?
Actually, it's funny because normally I'm the planner, and I think right now I'm having to take things day by day. As of the current moment, I mean, as soon as we get approved, the email's going to go out that says, let's go back to work. I think that one thing that employees may just want to keep in mind is that the position that you originally had, let's say, you were a DJ on staff. If you are coming back to work and getting paid what you were getting paid to DJ, you might just be doing a different role just to kind of get us through the next period. So I guess my answer to that would be, as soon as we get the money, let's go.
All right. Okay, the questions seem to have slowed down, and some of them are redundant with some of the things that were asked before. Let's go in one final round here for best practices. But before we do that, hey, John Slane, good friend of mine, why don't you tell everybody what you do and what you're sitting in front of there?
Well, I'm actually sitting in front of a painting that my main man, Matt, is responsible for. So that's the Cleveland skyline. But also sitting in front of copies of my book, which is called Rock the Recession, available on Amazon, and it has been prioritized on Amazon, so you will still get it quickly. It's not one of those things you have to wait a month for. But we put out the book to help business owners and individuals figure out, how can you rock the recession? How can you look forward to a recession and all the opportunities that recessions bring? So if you're interested, you can get a copy of that on Amazon. Matt's got a copy. And then also you can go to recession.com, which is my website. We've got a lot of tips and analysis there if you're looking for more info on PPP and everything related to how to get through recessions. That's the site that we've got.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on with us today. So let's go around the horn now. We'll talk about some best practices. If you were going to give some solid advice to anybody who's looking into PPP and other SBA related programs, just ramble here for us a little bit. Steve, we're going to go to you first.
Sure. The only thing that I would advise you to do is just make sure that you organize all of your information going into it. Just make sure that your forms are named properly. If you're submitting your documentation electronically, keep them orderly. Don't cut any corners. Pay attention to the details, because I think that if they have to come back and ask you for clarification on something, that's lost time. And because the program is first come, first serve, you want to make sure that you do your best to get every piece of information they're asking for accurately and in the detail that they're looking for the first time around.
Kristen?
Yeah, I would agree to that. And if I can just add details of that, I would say go ahead and log into any of your insurance providers that you have, specifically health insurance. Download the last 3 to 5 months of invoices for that, so you can prove that that's one piece that you might be spending money on. I would say have any statements with your mortgage or your building lease, have that in order. Go ahead and start pulling payroll reports so that you can figure out what that number might be. And then another form I might gather up is maybe just, a personal financial statement of what is the cash I have that's in and what is going out, just in case they ask for that. I think at this point in time is valuable to us right now. So when the door is open for you to apply, you just want to make sure that you have that stuff ready to go and you can pull the trigger.
Awesome. Now, before we do best practices from Jonathan Slane, we actually did have another couple questions that came in, and they're pretty good ones. So I want to try and do that. And thank you for your time, everybody. If by chance we go past the time that you're available, feel free to just wave and jump off. So be it. Okay, one of the questions that's just come up, and this one's coming from Facebook, is from Mr. Jamie Bodie. The question is there a chance we could be paying team members to stay at home? So
Absolutely.
how does this collide between the idea that there is a national health crisis, yet we're going to restart our payroll, but we're maybe not allowed to be near each other? Steve, you want to go first on that?
Yeah, but first a disclaimer: we haven't, as a company, myself, Matt, and Ryan, and the rest of the team, haven't discussed any concepts in stone as a strategy. So this is just an idea. I think that being granted the PPP loan and then the forgiveness on the other side of it is an opportunity to bring your employees back to work, but it's also an opportunity to create some goodwill and get them doing maybe some things at home. I don't think that you're going to get anybody to work 40 hours for you from home. So in part, maybe you just say, hey, guess what, guys? We were approved for the PPP. Here's your paycheck. And I'm going to ask you to be available for 15 to 20 hours a week of work. And you get them off unemployment and you get them feeling good. And I think, no, you don't bring them back. I don't think it's safe to bring them back, but you do give them some work to do. But I think the expectations should be modified.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is all conjecture, but let's go to the other side of it. And I'm going to give the tough part to, let's say, Kristen, and then Jonathan, you can maybe give us both of the sides of it. The next question is, what do you tell employees who can get a lot more from unemployment benefits with the additional $600 versus coming back to their previous pay with PPP? Have you thought through that, Kristen?
So this is actually a really great question. And have I thought into it? Yes. Through it? No. I think there's a couple of different, call them rumors or call them truths. I'm not sure. But from what I'm hearing is if an employee is offered to keep their job and they refuse it, and again, you'll have to research this yourself. But from what I'm hearing is if they refuse that and then take unemployment, they will automatically disqualify themselves from being hired back. So I think that they're taking the risk of not having a job on the other side of this. So I think that as an employee, they probably, and I would encourage them to think through what that risk could be if they refuse to do that. I mean, and if it's $100 or $200, I don't know if that risk is worth it for them.
Yeah, some states require you to attest as to whether or not you turn down work during the time at which you're filing for unemployment, because you have to file on a weekly basis, and they expect you to answer that honestly. I don't know how it is in all the different states, but in Ohio, you have to attest as to whether or not you were offered work and whether or not you were looking for work. A piece of that's been waived due to the mass layoff condition in the state of Ohio, but that's correct.
So, Jonathan, can you speak to that? We had a call the other day with a couple of our associates in EO Forum, and you were mentioning something, if I recall, to the effect of if for any reason, whether it has to do with PPP or not, especially under the mass layoff condition, that we offer somebody work and then they decline without citing having another job for what it is, that we have a responsibility to report. Can you expand on that a little bit?
In terms of what their obligations are under unemployment?
As the employer, if the employer asks for an employee's return to work, and then that employer is then, let's say, kindly challenged by the employee and said, "No, I'm good. I'm just gonna, I believe that there's a responsibility to report if they've declined the opportunity." You mentioned that the other day, I believe. Do you have any more information about that?
I don't. I would have to double check. I don't want to put out information unless I'm 100% positive.
Okay,
so
great.
We'll have to look into that and get back I did have one more best practice that I don't think anybody else shared, if you want that.
Bring it. Go for it.
So the one quick thing, I mean, I completely agree with what Steve and Kristen said in terms of best practices, but if possible, I want everyone to think about opening a new bank account for their PPP funds and put the funds that you receive in that clean bank account, and then pay all of your payroll for the 8 weeks that you're using for PPP, pay your utilities, your rent, or the interest portion of any debt from that same bank account. I think it'll just make it easier when you go to submit for forgiveness, when you go to prove out your use of PPP. I just want that all to be in one clean account rather than having the bank or having the government taking a look at your entire operating account to make sure that you were using the funds properly. I think that's one small thing that may help business owners down the road to just keep those funds segregated and clean if possible.
All right, great. Well, we don't currently have any other questions that are coming in, and we've covered everything in the redundant questions coming in. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate it. As always, please follow Rock the House on Facebook and Instagram. Feel free to reach out to Rock the House Entertainment or Rock the House Audiovisual. And also thank you to Kristen, Steve, and Jonathan. You guys rock. We really, really appreciate it. Any last words you guys want to say? Anything else?
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Wash your damn hands. If you have anything you'd like to see us do a session on the Rock the Couch series, please let us know, and we will do our absolute best. Have a great day, everybody. See ya.